Democrats are ramping up their pressure on Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer after his decision to vote in favor of the continuing resolution that avoided a government shutdown. He held his ground this weekend and defended his vote. Listen.
Look, I'm not stepping down. And let me just say this, Kristen. I knew when I cast my vote against against the government shutdown that there'd be a lot of controversy, and there was. But let me tell you and your audience why I did it, why I felt it was so important. My internal gyroscope said, regardless of the fact that some people would not like it, which I knew, that I had to do the right thing for the country and for our party.
I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion for more on this. So, Nikole, I mean, what kind of pressure, if any, is Senator Schumer feeling at the moment? I mean, I know the press is talking about the pressure, but just himself and the way that he sees his role and what he's looking to do going forward, is he feeling that heat?
Well, I think that's why you've seen him out pretty extensively over the last week or so. Granted, he does have a new book that's out, so part of it has been promoting that. But the other part has really been pushing it back against a lot of this criticism that he has been getting from the left with respect to his decision to back the GOP government spending bill along with a handful of other Democrats. But look, at the end of the day, he was caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, he continues to argue that shutting down the government was really the worst of two evils, which is why he felt supporting this GOP bill was the lesser of two evils, but it still isn't stopping some of the criticism. Take a listen to what Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes told our Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation this weekend.
I think we can do a lot better job with the leadership that we had. What I was acknowledging in that town hall meeting, and I will tell you, I've seen a lot of town hall meetings. I saw Chuck Grassley's town hall meeting. I saw my colleagues from Wyoming's, Ruby Red Wyoming's time in the barrel, and people are outraged.
So granted, Jim Himes is in the other chamber. He's in the House. So, you know, that probably doesn't really make Leader Schumer flinch. But I will say I, too, was out there, you know, talking to a variety of voters and constituents as these members of Congress did their town halls over the recent recess from North Carolina to right outside of Washington. And in terms of talking to some Democratic voters, they did tell me, look, we may need to start thinking about new leadership. Some expressed concern about Leader Schumer and Leader Hakeem Jeffries, for that matter. Others said, you know, it might be time to look for younger leadership. So this is a debate, certainly, that's been amplified by the situation involving Leader Schumer, but one certainly that the Democratic Party has been arguing since, of course, we saw former President Joe Biden having to step down out of the presidential race last year. You know, that, too, was about whether or not there should be a change in leadership within the Democratic Party. So, again, this is all part of that ongoing discussion, you know, whether or not it will move the needle in terms of forcing Chuck Schumer's hand. I would say unlikely, since he's pretty entrenched here in Congress, which is why he continues to say he's not backing down.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Nikole, you mentioned that the House and the Senate are both back this week after being in their districts and some of them holding these town halls. Are any of the grievances that both Republicans and some Democrats face, Democrats because they feel, as we just discussed, that Democrats aren't doing enough to push back on Trump and Elon Musk, and Republicans because they feel that they're doing too much in allowing an unelected official to have so much control over the federal government? Are they coming back to Washington with any priorities related to some of those town halls?
Well, you know, the main priority remains for Republicans, obviously, now that the government has been funding and that fight is kind of over with for the time being. You know, Republicans are really at the point where they're trying to move ahead with President Trump's agenda, despite some of them getting an earful when they were at home. But they really want to codify some of these changes into law, but they also want to turbocharge the president's legislative agenda, particularly around the issues of border security, energy, extending his tax cuts, as we've talked about over the last several weeks and months here. Of course, you know, there are two different versions. There's a version in the House that is kind of that big, beautiful bill. The Senate bill is a little smaller. So now Republicans, as they come back here, are going to be putting their heads together to try to get that into some type of compromise package. Vlad?
Yeah. And I know, as we just pointed out with the breaking news earlier, Nikole, that the president's going to be holding a cabinet meeting. I'll be very interested in seeing what congressional reaction is to Elon Musk once again being a part of that meeting that the president's going to hold.